Hi, I'm Kat McDavitt, and I am interviewing lady bosses for the Hit Like a Girl podcast. And we have our first guest, Miriam Paramore, who is my personal hero and someone who supported me throughout my career. She is the president and chief strategy officer at Optimize RX. And Miriam, I'm going to let you give yourself your intro because it's going to be better than anything I do.
Okay. Hey, Kat, thank you so much. Hi, guys. And I love Hit Like a Girl. I actually would recommend first out of the gate that everybody take boxing lessons. If you haven't, it's a great workout and it's a lot of fun. It's very empowering. But I've really appreciated, I want to give a shout just a little bit to HIMSS, which has been just a great place for me to be and be part of. We'll probably talk about that. But anyway, thanks to both of those groups for helping put this together and kind of get the word out. Kind of was thinking about like, what's my, kind of story and how did I get to where I am? I'll start with my day job. So Optimize RX is a health IT company. We are publicly traded on NASDAQ, and we sit as a connector or a conduit between various people in the healthcare ecosystem. The focus of the company is affordability, access, and adherence to prescription medication. So it's something that is close to my heart. There's a lot of talk about health equity. We might get into some of that, but it really inspired me to take this position in terms of understanding how to use data to help people save money, and then use my sort of techie geek background from the world of HIMSS and so forth to come into this role. And as president here, I've been here for about 4 years, and chief strategy officer as well. And we've had a really good sort of market reception to what we do, which is making sure that doctors know what the prices of prescriptions and what the availability of copay coupons and other savings opportunities are, and that patients can get access to those drugs easily. And, that's kind of our role. So my career's been about 35 years, and I started out like in the way back before computers. So we can we can talk
the
about
way back, the way back.
In the way back. Yeah, I call them, pre-COVID, the before times, like when I used to shower every day.
And we just so everyone knows, we did shower for this specifically today.
Yeah, we did. I blew out my hair, put on some makeup, and so it's a fancy day today. Yeah, for sure. But I have had an interesting observation through the course of my career, because I started out as a programmer. My degree is in math and computer science. And I was listening to somebody last week talk at the Women Business Leaders Conference, which a shout out to Lynn Shapiro Snyder with Women Business Leaders in Healthcare, another great organization to learn from and be part of. But, a couple of the folks were just saying, where did they come from? And I grew up in the Southeast. I grew up in Tennessee and North Carolina, and my dad was a preacher. So right there, everybody that's listening to this is going, that's what's wrong with her. But when I was raised in a super small kind of environment and bubble. And I went to Belmont University here in Nashville, a small sort of liberal arts college. So nothing really fancy about that. I have an undergraduate degree in math and computer science, and got out of school and went to work for HCA as a programmer. And, from there, I did a lot of different things. But, one of the things I think is interesting is sometimes many of us sort of don't feel that great about maybe where we went to school, or, maybe we don't have an Ivy League, or, maybe we didn't come from Silicon Valley, or, wherever, some of the, bigger places. And, that's okay. You can still, kind of rise up.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know that's something that I've always thought was a great learning from you. And I want to get there. So, but I know you also have this like incredible career trajectory, right? Yeah. Like you've done amazing things. So, yeah. So let's come back to that. But yeah, so you were a programmer at HCA, and then suddenly you became president of Optimize RX. Is that how it happened?
That's how it happened. I was in a coma for 34 years, and then I woke up. I think of my career in kind of 3 sections. I think of it as sort of like, I just need a job, right out of college, and that one was available. And early in my career, I learned that I like technology and I'm good at it. I really like technology. I like data, But what I like more than that is using technology to improve things in the healthcare system, the delivery of healthcare, or to solve sort of business problems.
Mhm.
And as I got into a little bit further in my career, I got into management consulting at E&Y. And from there, I kind of got a bird's eye view of multiple parts of the industry. And that was when I got really my first big break. One of my clients gave me opportunity to come in to be general manager of a revenue cycle company. And I took that job. And from there, I became the CEO of an Anthem subsidiary. And I was really young. I was like 30, 31 years old.
Mm.
But it was a big responsibility at that time. It was, a wholly owned subsidiary doing all of the revenue cycle transactions, all the EDI, all the claims, remittances, eligibility, all the kind of HIMSS-esque kind of, commerce of
Yep.
healthcare. And gave me an understanding. This was in the early 90s of the revolution, really revolution, transformation from paper-based claiming to electronic claims and electronic eligibility verification and electronic payment.
Mm.
And so, from there, I sort of grew. That was kind of a big, kind of a step up from individual
Yeah. That
contributor
sounds
to,
wild. All
yeah,
of a
to
sudden
running.
you're leading
Yeah.
a business.
Yeah, I was running this little, it was a small business in relative terms, but it was part of a very huge company. And that's how I got to Louisville, Kentucky from Indianapolis, where the headquarters of Anthem was at the time where I worked. So it was an interesting, and I met one of my first mentors, Sheila Schweitzer, who was just leaving that job to go and do some other things. And she's been a mentor and stayed with me. She's a serial entrepreneur, very successful in health IT. And she gave me lots of good advice kind of as she was leaving and going on to her next thing. And then from there, I had my first sort of personal kind of crisis where I had a lot of changes in my personal life. I got divorced. I had two small sons,
Mm.
and I really had a sort of existential. I'm not sure I can manage all these things that are going on in my life right now. And I took a really big risk, and I left that sort of prestigious job in a big company. And I just left, and I didn't have a net to jump to, but what I did know was that I needed to sort of get myself together and focus in on the balance of my personal and professional life, and being a single mom, which was sort of really different from where I thought I'd be when I made that move to Louisville. And I needed to marshal my resources in a different way than maybe I had done before. It was a big life change. I had just moved to a new city, got divorced 6 months later, just a lot of change.
Yeah.
And so that change taught me that, when you have skills and knowledge and a good network, which are some of the other things that we'll talk about today, you really can drive your own destiny, and you can make decisions that somebody else would say, well, you're insane to, nobody does that. Nobody walks away from that, or nobody goes and does this. I didn't do it because I was bright, all that smart, but I did it because I knew I needed to, and it's knowledge that I needed to make a change. I also had this knowledge that I had, this knowing that I had knowledge and I could make a path for myself, and
Mhm.
specialty knowledge and a strong network of relationships I had built up over the prior probably 10 years or so. And I think it's a little bit similar, Kat, in a way to when you started in Senna. You were with an extremely well-known agency and very well-known within that. But I remember that time, maybe was that similar for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is something I'd love to actually talk about a little bit, because I think these big moves, I know a lot of women can struggle with them, right? Not only is it like, the classic imposter syndrome, can I do it on my own? Like, is this going to be okay? But I think that, and I've spoken about this too, and you helped me through that period a ton, even just by being there on the phone with me when I was like, just talking at you, right?
Yeah.
But I think what I've learned from that period is exactly what you're saying. If you have the skills and you have the network and you have delivered results, I
Yeah.
think you can do anything.
Agree.
And I think that what I learned as being like at that time in my life, not a very interesting person, right? Never really thinking other people were going to pick me up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I fell backward. I did the trust fall and everybody was there for me, right? And I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I think
a
that
way to
was
put it.
awesome.
To put
Yeah.
it, when everybody that hasn't worked with Kat, she's one of the best in the industry, if not the best. She is the best PR
I
uh,
paid her for all of this.
worked with. So I drug her into all these other businesses that I did after I left. But I just tell you that I'll kind of fast forward. So that was kind of the middle section of my career. I'll come back to that. And then the last section of my career has been, so I had my own consulting firm for about 7 years. I focused on HIPAA and, technology sort of transformation around the ledge reg. And one of my really good friends, George Lazenby, who I had met through HIMSS and done volunteer work with for years around data interoperability, standardization, data transparency, the power of data, which is where my passion is. He became the CEO of MDON, which is now Change Healthcare. And I was fortunate enough to be his first executive team hire. And I didn't think I'd go back into a big business at that point. It's kind of having fun and, sort of doing my own thing, and very loosely defined in terms of, nobody else's agenda but mine. But I had he gave me such an extraordinary opportunity to come in and run strategy with him. And we had an incredible run. We took the business from about 600 million to 1.2 billion. We took it public. Was the largest health IT IPO at the time. And in running strategy for that group and looking across all sectors, I got even more exposure into health plans and how they work, hospital systems, practices, retail pharmacy, PBM, the back end. And really, what does it take? What's the data plumbing that kind of goes under all of that? And then you don't just have data for the sake of data. You hope that you can transform it into information and make it useful, and improve our healthcare system. So I left MDON after we sold it. We took it back private and sold it. And then in the last kind of 7 years of my career, I'd worked a lot with venture and private equity companies. We did a lot of acquisitions, but I'd not been an angel investor. So I'd never written my own checks with my own money to put into somebody else's business idea. So I helped start a group here in Nashville called New Cura Partners. I was one of the first members there. And it's a bunch of individual people like me who are former operators or operators of businesses, not people that come from a traditional investment banking background or went to business school. And we started this angel investment group. So I've done, I think, 5 investments now, and one of the companies is out of business. The other 4
you win some, you lose some, right?
And I still, I have the pleasure of doing this day job, and that I met Lynn Voss, who is on our board of directors, who ran one of the largest agencies in the world focused on life sciences. And I just met her at a WBL standing in the hall, and that's one of those things that's a great value of networking. You don't underestimate it, because you never know who the person you're standing next to is. And she was like, "Oh, this is what I do." And I said, "Well, this is what I do." And she said, "That sounds a lot like this company on the board. You should meet the new CEO. We're going to build a management team." And so I did. And from there, I really loved the idea of really helping data to surface all of these affordability options for patients to help them afford their medications and get access to them quickly. That's this part of my career. And as I move forward, maybe into 4th chapter of my career, it's really about finding leverage for myself. So one way to do that is serve on boards. And I do have one health IT board that I'm on, private equity backed company. And this is where, you're quite a bit older than you, but so it's been 35 years for me in healthcare. And you learn a lot. And so, a number of things, and then you can help other companies that are at different stages, and you can help people that are trying to start something, things like you're doing with the fund that you just started. You can make choices. You have what I call optionality, whereas sort of earlier in your career, you're just trying to earn a living.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I love where you're going. I love some of the ideas you have for your phase four. I think it's awesome. And I want to go back to talking about the power of a network. Because sometimes, you hear these podcasts or whatever, and you're like, networking, blah, blah, blah. And it seems so academic. But in my career, and I know in yours, based on what you're saying, and what you've shared with me, like I would be nowhere without a network.
Right.
And it sounds a little bit contrived to say, but yeah, those hallway conversations, drinking a glass of wine at the bar, just meeting people in an airport, right? I think that those kind of run-ins, those more casual run-ins have like honestly altered the direction of my career.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. And I would say that, for one of the biggest um, sort of strengtheners of my entire career has been HIMSS.
mm,
HIMSS is a fantastic organization. It's just like anything else in life, and it does sound cliche. You get out what you put in. And
yep.
so, many times I would have my staff, as I build teams in different companies, I would say, part of your job is to volunteer some of your time to work on something at HIMSS. And, you don't go in there saying, I'm going to be the star of this, new show. I want to be the chair of this committee.
Right.
You go in and you just raise your hand and you say, how can I help? And if you're the person that needs to be, set up the chairs for the meeting, that's kind of where you start. And that is where I started. And you do work. And from there, you make connections with those committee members. You really have to intentionally work this network. So it's, there is random stuff, and sometimes random stuff it serendipitously leads to something, but more often it's really tending to relationships, as if you really want that relationship to know that person, to know you value knowing them,
Right.
without
Right.
having
And
a
you,
specific
and
ask.
yeah, and you just said something that I think is really important, and it's how do I work this network? It's almost how do I work for this network,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And
a
and
better way
we've
to put it.
we've
Mhm.
talked about this in the past too, and I feel like with me, I feel like the more that I put in, the more that I give, the more that I have, right? And
Yes,
it's definitely not why you don't go, hey, I'm going to go,
right,
volunteer and I'm going to put all this in because I expect to get an amazing amount of stuff out. I mean, you really have to care about people, otherwise it's not
you do.
authentic.
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
It's not authentic. And that, I do think though that sometimes just working, if you really work, if you show up, people respect that. That's a lot. That's a lot of it. And then no one has the capacity or the time, the energy to network with everybody. So you have to
Yep.
pick people, but you find energy to, widen that circle. And HIMSS has been a great organization, Women Business Leaders, which I mentioned,
Yep.
using LinkedIn strategically, and don't ask for more than you give. I mean, give more, and then you're going to get back, but you don't know exactly how, it's going to show up.
Yep.
But it will. And just
It
kind of
will.
pay attention to people. And it's important, and you can follow them, you can care about them, you can help them. And it definitely comes back
Yeah.
for sure.
I completely agree with you. So, I mean, so we're talking about networks, we're talking about putting in the work and being, just doing the job and getting things done, even if it's not for your actual day job. And I want to go back to the discussion on education, because
Yeah.
this is something that I gained a lot of confidence in my own career from hearing you talk about this. And I have like kind of worthless Bachelor of Arts degrees, like in
Yeah.
religion and politics, like what? And I've made it quite far in a technical field, right? And you talk about this little degree you have from Belmont. Belmont's actually a very good school. I'm not sure if you checked in lately,
Yeah.
but
Well,
but
I was there a long time ago,
okay, maybe it wasn't that good back then. I don't know. But
It's a good school.
you
Yeah.
talk about, oh, I don't have an advanced degree, I didn't go to Harvard, and you have really good advice, I think, that I'd love for people to hear about being in that position, and what the doors aren't closed to you necessarily, you just have a different path.
That's true. I'll say that for a long time, I really had a little bit of a pity party for myself because I didn't go to a big school. And I do think it's a little bit, it's probably a little bit harder. And the reason is that when you do go to a renowned named school, they have a lot of built-in networks.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of people do business together. Well, we were in business school together. Well, I learned, I didn't even know what that meant, business school. I thought, wow, what is that? Years ago. But, it usually means
Oh,
Harvard or
like,
Stanford.
what's a B school? They have to go to the B
school. I
school.
don't know that.
Like, oh yeah, I went to one of those schools. Are we talking about a tier B school? Because I went to one of those, right?
Exactly. I didn't know. I was young. I didn't know what it meant. So, but there is that's part of the value of that education that people pay for. You do come out of that. You have that camaraderie. Everybody's going to rise up. And so, kind of, each other. You can create the same thing for yourself, regardless of wherever you get your education, or even if you don't have an education. There are a lot of people that don't have, a college degree that have done amazing, world changing things. So I let it be in my own head. I let it be a limiter to me for a while. And then I got to the place where I was like very defiant. And I was like, you know what, in spite of the fact that I didn't, have an Ivy League education. But now I look at it just a little bit more philosophically. And I want to encourage everyone that regardless of what your formal education is, lean hard towards lifelong learning. I used to hear that and I would think, oh, I don't know what that is, but I don't want to do it. Lifelong learning. But then I found out that I actually do it anyway. And one of the ways that I do it is I'm very intellectually curious. So something that I'm learning about recently, just through my network, is genomic medicine, how genomics are coming into healthcare service delivery, the field of pharmacogenetics, which is the intersection of our genome with a specific pharmaceutical. Super fascinating, new frontier, next frontier of how medicine will be practiced. And so I'm curious about that, and I read about that and I learn about it. It doesn't really do anything in my day job, but it's fascinating. And then the other thing that I've really done is work on my business skills. And some of my mentors help me with this. Like they would say, hey, listen, you're not an accountant, but if you're going to run a company, you need to understand financial statements, and you need to be able to understand what the numbers mean and what's behind the numbers. And you really can run a business backwards from a spreadsheet if you know what the numbers mean, because the results always show up in the numbers. And then you can trace back to, what's driving these. So I had to, seek that sort of MBA-ish, financial-ish sort of knowledge differently. But I needed that knowledge, and nobody just gives it to you. So, that was sort of an OJT. And then there's just lots of educational opportunities, and just, don't allow yourself to think we're all never done learning, but you can round out your own, sort of what I have learned, round out your base education with some of the other things that you may need to run a business or to have deep subject matter expertise. In your case, you're one of the most content rich people I know in terms of health IT and health tech. That industry, that industry cold, but you don't have a degree in that industry.
I sure do not.
But you have applied your skills and just continue to learn. So I do think that's been a big help for me.
Yeah.
Big part of life.
Yeah, on the job, and then this we'll call it lifelong learning, because it might make us squint a little, but yeah, no, I agree. I think as long as you put in the work, again, as long as you have a little bit of grit and you're curious, right? I think that you can go really far. Okay. So this could turn into my love letter to Miriam Paramore. So I'm going to try not to do that, but I would like to talk about your superpowers. And this is like another one of these contrived things you hear on like a women's empowerment podcast or something, but there's some truth to it, right? And I think there's truth to knowing what you're good at and leaning into it. Yeah. So tell me, Miriam, so that I don't have to turn this into the Kat McDavitt Loves Miriam show. What are your superpowers?
Well, it always makes me a little uncomfortable, but I'll let me try to answer that sincerely. I think that my superpower is strategic thinking. I seem to have the ability to look at a very complicated set of facts or a very complicated set of industry movers or markets or activities and connect all the dots very quickly in a way that other people may not. And I think that skill combined with my very deep knowledge of healthcare and healthcare tech allows me to be of service to people that are trying to invest in companies, people that are trying to build companies, or take a product and turn it into a business. And that's probably the thing that I'm the best at. And on the flip side of that, I was listening to some people talk about their superpowers last week, because it is, kind of a thing people do.
Yeah.
I ask, well, why don't we ever ask, what's your kryptonite? Right? We always just ask.
Listen, we'll get to that. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite topics.
But to me, they're connected, and I know they're connected for me personally. So part of my superpower and part of what's gotten me to where I am is I have a pretty good clock speed on that mental clock speed that goes along with what I was just saying. So
Right.
I can see the end and see the conclusion pretty quickly. And then I put on top of that some pretty rapid fire, pretty transparent / blunt /
I love your direct style. So
very direct. Thank you. And I think that's okay. I have taken a fair amount of criticism through the years. I do think there's some gender stuff going on with that, but a lot of that criticism is constructive and fair. And there it becomes my kryptonite. So, I would say that my favorite saying, I say this often, is that weaknesses are strengths overplayed. So, just as an example, if you're confident, that's a strength. But if you overplay it, you can become arrogant. That's a weakness, So for me, when I go too fast, when I'm frustrated or tired, when I'm emotional rather than, dispassionate, my direct and blunt communication, it's just not, it's just less appropriate than it could be,
I understand.
Yeah, and it can piss people off. It can turn them off. But what I've learned is that it's also great because it just cuts through everything, and it can save a lot of time. And it's something that I appreciate about you, that I don't want to be surrounded by people who take a long time to say something. It's always like, get to the point.
That's a nice way to say it. Yeah.
And I don't want to be surrounded by yes people. And if the answer is no, tell me no. Right. And I'm going to be grateful that you told me quickly. So I love to get to a fast no rather than a drawn out maybe.
Yeah.
So it's taken me a long time, and I still struggle with it a little bit, but it's taken me a long time to just say, look, that's who I am. That's how I communicate. And if it comes, as I try to harness that a little bit, Kat, and kind of smooth that out, sometimes I'm better than others, and sometimes I'm just not that good at it. And I have to say, hey guys, mea culpa, I can't be a different person than I am. And so I have to embrace that, but I also have to adjust, for the audience. I think we talked about this a little bit last time, that it's really important to think about who your audience is in all of your communication. And sometimes I just forget,
Yeah. Well, me too. I think you and I have a similar superpower / kryptonite, right? And I've learned that more about myself now that I just came off this journey of being actually employed as an executive at a company that exited very well recently, and it was different, right? I mean, when you're a consultant, like you're kind of paid to be in charge, right? Everyone expects you to be in charge, and
that's true. That's true. You don't have to blend in with, right? You
don't have to blend in, and you're allowed to be shiny and weird, right? And you can, you wear your weird earrings and whatever. And I think in a setting where you're part of a true team, and we have teams in agency, but like it's a little bit different, right? But when you're part of a real executive team, and I'd have an idea, and I'd be like, this is what we're going to do. And I would just say it. And even if it was counter to everyone else, I would just say it. And I'd be like, I'm right. Like, why aren't they just doing what I'm telling them to do? Right. Because I was so used to just being like, here's what's
Yeah,
happening,
yeah.
right?
What you hired me for, right?
Right. And
Exactly.
similar, I mean, and I would say like I didn't actually ever learn how to do it that well, but I was trying a little bit. Maybe no one could notice. I was trying to be like, here's my idea. What do you think?
Exactly.
Instead of like, that's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that about you. I mean, I love that about you. I mean, it's sort of almost the efficiency aspect of communication.
If you want to get the job done.
And it kind of goes back to the clock speed. Sometimes it can be counterproductive. I do want to take just a minute, if it's okay. This will kind of
Of course.
connect to the education, the things that you learn. And I have seen with this hit like a girl kind of thing in mind, I've seen that women leaders generally are more direct than a male leader. That's my experience in their communication style. And the thing that kind of makes me angry still is that I know this has been assigned to me. Well, you're intimidating. You're intimidating, and it's that strong male leader. Strong men are leaders. Strong women are
Put a nasty
whatever.
word.
Leave it out. Whatever.
We'll bleep that out.
And that's frustrating because in the early part of my career, I'd say probably the first half of my career, Kat, I did not see myself walking into a meeting as a woman. I saw myself walking into a meeting as a coworker. That's really true. In my mind, I wasn't thinking of myself as a female human. I was thinking of myself as a colleague.
Right.
What other people were seeing was that's a woman, and she's a colleague. They might be fine, but they were, and I wasn't aware enough that at that point that there was a lot of gender sort of differences around how people think of strong women. And so I do think that's, intimidating is code for, you're too strong or too opinionated or too something. Whereas with male counterparts, I've seen that not be the case as much. And so I think I raise that not to sort of have let's all feel bad about that, but if you're aware that other people may not be as thoughtful as you are about there's a lens, and it used to really hurt my feelings because I thought, wait, I thought that we were all in the locker room.
We're all hanging out. We're all the same.
We're in the locker room, kicking stuff around, and here, these are the ideas, and but that wasn't the case a lot of the time. And now I'm a little bit better at sensing it. And one of the great things about getting older is sometimes I don't care at all. I just don't.
Right.
Like, okay, call me whatever you want to call me. Put in the adjective, put in the descriptor. I don't care.
I'm totally with you. I've earlier in my career, I didn't the same thing. I didn't really think about it. I didn't, and also I was in a female dominated industry, right? Public relations agencies there's a lot of women. But at some point, the company invested in coaches for some of the executives. And so I got one, and this coach, it was actually listen, if anyone has a chance to do that, it was really helpful for me because you don't know how other people perceive you. And this coach told me, this coach told me, he said, he's like, you intimidate men. Specifically, did not say I intimidate. Now I'm pretty sure I intimidate both, right? I don't think but especially for clients, right? You intimidate men, and you need to develop some sort of disarming device to your personality, right? And so I think what happened is I've developed kind of this my style is very I'll joke around and I'll tell a bunch of bullshit jokes, and then I'll go for the jugular, right? And I'm still not sure it works, but people tell me that I have that all the time, and I'm like, oh, that was a decision that I made with someone else to try that, and I guess I was a one-hit wonder and never tried any other tools to get around it. And I think back, and I get mad too. I'm like, why did I even have to do that, right?
Yeah.
But but I think, you know, especially in consulting, I mean, you have to pay attention to some of those things. And
You do. You do.
um,
And we're all, I just, it brings to mind that, people do business with people that they like.
hmm,
So, you have to be always conscious of, you're never kind of trying to do it to be mean, but you could offend somebody. And I do offend people when I like get too excited and I'm running my mouth and, I'm coming up with ideas. And, I like to goof around. I like to laugh a lot. And sometimes people don't think my jokes are funny. And, I'm
same.
like, okay, well, but I just think that for all of us that are listening, all of us that are out there every day, there's something about who we are that someone else is not going to like. I mean, that's just
Mhm.
life, and it's okay. And if I were not, if I kept trying to edit myself back too much, Kat, I would just be, kind of shriveled away to, maybe a shadow of myself. And I don't want to do that. We all should be ourselves.
Right.
I do think that your idea of, sort of a sweet, not a sweetener, but a disarmer, things like that. Feel out your room. That's some really good advice. Feel out your room and try to really understand where people are coming from to the degree you can. Fortunately, it's not that hard. And I do want to say that, it takes practice, but I didn't know where the room was. And I've talked to you about this. Like,
It's one of my favorite Miriam stories.
yeah. So I used to think, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get into the, position of authority. I want to have a voice. I want to be a leader. I want to be a decision maker. And they're over in some room somewhere. And there's the boardroom, and then there's the executive conference room. I'm like, where are these rooms? And how do you get into these rooms?
Right.
And, who is in there? And most of the time in my career, when I found the room, I was the only girl in there. And that's my book I'm going to write, The Only Girl in the Room.
Yeah. Yeah.
There really is, this is really true. And all the statistics about women CEOs, women on boards, you could go to any measure, and we're making tons of progress there. But there is a built-in 2,000-year head start in the patriarchy society that we have, minimum 2,000 years.
Yeah.
And then you come out, when you talk about education, if you're coming out and you're having, 90 to 95% of the folk in that class are, male. You talk about like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of my heroes. She got her degree, her law degree at Harvard. No one would hire her as a lawyer. And she had, she was the only woman in the class, and all of these things. That was only 50 years ago.
Right.
Wasn't that long ago. And girls in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, we don't have enough female representation. So the pipeline comes out, and if you've got this fraternity sort of thing going, somebody knows where the cigars are and where the room is. And like, they're like, oh, come on. And we went to B school together. Or you're my B school friend's, son. So it took me a long time you have to meander around to find where the room is. And then you have to earn the right to be in there.
Right.
And that's just about earning and having the merits, to really kind of be a contributor at that level. And we can absolutely do that. Does it take a little bit more effort? Yes. But there are people who have a lot of intention around, even NASDAQ now, for publicly traded companies, they're counting female representation on NASDAQ traded companies. These are important, very big breakthroughs that we're making, but you gotta find it, and nobody's going to tell you where it is. You got to find it.
Yeah, well, exactly. So we were having kind of a casual, like, fun conversation a few weeks ago, Miriam, and you said something to me that I love. And you said, Kat, women don't have the book, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a book, right? And I think what's awesome about you and some others who are mutual friends of ours is that you guys, you have figured it out, right? You have found the room. You've got a seat at the table. Didn't even know what those seats looked like before you got there, right? And you have been the only girl in the room. But the great thing about you is you're kind of sharing the book, right? And it might be chicken scratch on Post-it notes, but you're sharing the book.
Yes.
I think the more women that get into those positions and do the hard thing, I think the easier it's going to get. And again, I think this little TV show we're doing here, I think, is evidence of that, right? Like, how can we help other people do that?
Yeah. Well, I thank you. And it's one of the joys of my life. I've been working with sort of women empowerment efforts now for about 15 years. And I got to set one up inside of MDON, and it was an affinity group, and just an overwhelming response because that people want to know where the room is, and they want to know, and they want to succeed, and people are coming from all different kinds of backgrounds and education and ethnicities and countries, and sometimes just basic language is a barrier. There's multiple things going on here. And I'll never forget, we had our first Women of MDON meeting, and we had a little breakfast, and there were over 200 people that came there. We just had some breakfast, and 200 women show up. We did this sort of speed dating thing where we could just sort of talk to people in little clips of time because there's so many people. This one lady came up to me, and she's, we had 4,000 people in the company, so I didn't know her, and she worked in like one of the customer support areas, and she came up to me, and sort of English as a second language, so she had a strong accent, and she said, "I'm just so glad to meet you. So nice to meet you. Meet these other women." She said, "I'm the first person. No, I'm the first woman in my family to go to college."
Mm.
And then she said, "I'm the first woman in my family to even have a job."
Wow.
Outside the home. And I mean, I was just like, she was so emotional about it, because for her to have stepped into these realms where her own, family had not stepped into these realms, and she got the education and she made the choice. It was just so moving. And so just connecting her to other women so that we can just help and energetically raise each other up, it's a great joy. And that's why I love these sorts of venues. We can take a punch, we can deliver a punch, too. I mean, that's great.
That's correct. And I've shared this with you before too, but I've often been told that if someone comes at me with a punch, I block it and then punch back and then trip them a little bit later to show them I remember.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, something, we all have things to work on, whatever.
No, I get it. There's a good lesson there that, it really does pay to be strong. We have to be strong. And I think that comes from an inner knowing. So like, kind of know your strengths, but also know your kryptonite, and then say, kind of, that's okay. I mean, that, like, bleep, but you have to be able to pull this all in and say, I'm okay with this. And then I'm okay.
This is me. I can
Right.
be
I'm
this.
okay with this. And I can take the ups and downs, but I'm going to make it. And then, ask for help if you don't know. And then you can, just continue to move sort of as you go along, but you have that authentic strength because it is coming from inside you. But we don't have to be defensive. And that's one of the things I'm learning. There's a difference between sort of being strong and having that confidence and being defensive, which to your point earlier has been something that has happened to me, where I've been sort of defensive because you're just one down.
Mm-hmm.
You're one down, and you're kind of like, it's kind of like my experience when I talk to people from the Northeast. It's like, well, yeah, I'm Southern, so I don't know, right? So it's like, but we have this like area, like maybe you go in, most women don't feel this way anymore, but maybe you feel intimidated when you go in if you're the only girl in there,
Yeah.
And so if you feel that way, then you can be sort of like, you can be sort of defensive.
Yeah. I call
So
that like pulling the razor blades out of your scrunchie, like maybe that's just,
you can just, and that people can feel that energy, but you do want to be strong, and so those are things that we learn, I think, as we get a little more mature. You said something the other day to me about, which I wanted to kind of mention, about just watching other women do.
Let me talk about that, because this might, you got to stop me if this turns into a love letter again, but and I've talked about this publicly about, people ask me like, oh, how'd you get where you got, blah, blah, blah. And one of the greatest gifts of my career, honestly, has been not even, your friendship has been amazing. let's be clear, but just having the opportunity to watch you. And so, so for everyone, I met Miriam when she was in this strategy role at MDon, and she was like big deal, lady boss. And I was, beginning my career, so to speak. And I saw her in meetings, just little things that I think I wouldn't have otherwise known how to deal with. And so if she was spoken over by a colleague, male or female, only girl in the room, so most likely it was male, but just watching her gracefully say, "I'm not done speaking," and continue on, was those little things I think are so valuable for other women to see and see the reaction and say, "That's okay. And I can do that, right? I can mimic that." It's been phenomenal. And even kind of watching you, move through your career and take on different positions, and the choices you've made, and the no's that you have said, right? That's been important for me to watch, that what you have said no to has been more impactful for me than what you've said yes to.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's really interesting. Thank you for that. And I really appreciate that. Kat, it means a lot to me, coming from you, and just really coming from you, because I have so much respect for what you do and how you do it. And I'd say also that I want to share that it's great to be a fan of each other. And,
It is. It's very nice.
I mean, it is. And I people have talked about a lot, sort of, do women support other women, or are they tearing each other down or fighting? I've really never found that to be true. I've not found, I mean, maybe they were like, and I didn't know they were, but I mean, to my knowledge, I have not found that to be an issue. And I would say, if anyone feels that they need to tear down another woman, I would say, look right inside yourself, girl, because there's something going on in here. The world is big enough for all of us. And even though there are a few slots, you're not going to get there by making somebody else less. You're going to get there by making yourself more, and you can earn, your way to wherever you want to go. So, but I know I need it. Like these words of encouragement, or somebody says, "Hey, I saw you do that, and I thought it was really impressive." Don't underestimate how important it is to tell somebody that they did a really good job, to say that was amazing, Kat, the way you pulled that off. And, we got from this sort of market recognition to this sort of, market recognition and net promoter scores and whatever you want to measure.
I love that. I love what you're saying, because I think that I've recently had this experience where I've had, it was really flattering, but some women asked me to be their mentors, and I was like, holy shit, like, do they even know what's going on in here? Right. And what they told me was like, oh, like, you're so confident and you've done so much, and you really, like, you pulled people through the battlefield. And I'm like, and it's crazy, because I think people don't realize when you're talking to a confident woman who's, had some great accomplishments, they think, oh, she doesn't need to hear that we'd like to think she did, right? But it was so impactful, right? To hear like, oh, like, you really so, because people don't see what's going on inside, right? They don't see that, like, maybe you were tough in a conference call or whatever and did a big thing, but then you kind of cried about it in the bathroom, right? Right? Which maybe that's just me, but it really, it's so impactful to hear those things.
It's true. And I hope that, people, as they think about leadership and female leadership, there is a place and a time to say, hey, look, like, just talk about your feelings. Like, you can say, look, my feelings are hurt because somebody said this, and words are powerful. And then you feel like you should be above all that, or you should be beyond it, or so, whatever. But we're just people. Right. And my job is not a job. My career is not even really a career. I think of it as the way that I express myself creatively. I can't paint. I don't
have any skills either. So I
don't sing. I have no other skills, but I love solving problems, and I love the power of information in healthcare. And I love helping people. I love building teams. I love helping people rise up in their own, career, and creating something out of nothing just because it's a business. It's still an act of creation. So it's a creative process for me. And this type of thing is really brings me a lot of joy. I'm very grateful for this.
Awesome. Well, We have been chit-chatting for almost 60 minutes straight. I have one, well, I actually have two more questions for you, but
Okay.
I add them together because I like to take the edge off, because I'm going to
Okay.
make you tell everyone about something amazing you have accomplished. But
Okay.
you can say before or after, what is like your biggest bomb?
Yeah. I was thinking about this and I thought of a very philosophical answer, Kat, that was going to be, I don't think I've had any failures because everything is just a lesson. But I have had failures, and I've had sort of the biggest business case, hard case I can think of was when I was about a year into my consulting business, and I had sold a pretty big project to a large health system, and I had no way to actually deliver the project. Like it needed, it needed five or so people who had some specific technical expertise. And I was using my network and I said, hey, do you have like people that have these skills? And this person said, yes. So I contracted and go into delivery. Well, it turns out those people either weren't available, were incompetent, dropped the ball, any number of things. Bottom line, I could not deliver on the contract. And, the wheels were falling off and I was trying to kind of make it. And I was so mortified. I thought, this doesn't ever happen. People don't do this. People don't put their name. I don't put my name on something and not deliver. I always do what I say. But I had just gotten a little bit over my skis, and what it forced me to do was have an honest conversation with the client and say, look, I'm sorry. I had these resources lined up. I thought we were going to be able to deliver in this time frame, and we can't. And I'm sorry. And it hurt so bad. And then I just had to let it go. But I felt like a total incompetent buffoon. But, what I learned from that was a little bit more about how to think through, it's not really a trust issue, but sometimes your suppliers or your other labor people, it does fall apart. I mean, sometimes it happens. So that was a big one. And it was my name, my company. So it kind of hurt, but it wasn't that big of a deal. They were like, well, okay, you sort of suck, but it's not the end of the world.
That's a good outcome. That's a good outcome.
That wasn't the end of the world. And I was terrified because I thought I'll never get another client. They'll call everyone in the universe and say, don't ever contract with her and her company because she'll drop the ball. But that didn't happen. And it was a unique situation. In terms of my, a big victory or win for myself, the thing that I thought about that too. So I thought about, what I'm going to say, that'd be like the biggest numbers associated with it, be awesome, look great on a spreadsheet. And I've done some of those things, but the thing that has the most personal value to me, business accomplishment, is when I was running strategy at MDON. You were working, I think, helping us at the time. But I had this passion for electronic funds transfer, replacing paper checks. And I think I still have that paper check up here, but sometimes healthcare requires legislation and regulation to actually change and adopt a technology. So it was when the Affordable Care Act was getting written, and I was able to work with a lobbyist, go to Washington, just like on Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just I loved it. And there's one paragraph in the Affordable Care Act administrative simplification provision that I wrote. And, I figured out that $11 billion with a B was wasted every single year because payers were reimbursing providers, or on a paper check basis. And that was because of industry inertia to just take electronic funds transfer, just like you and I do with direct deposit. Doctors and hospitals weren't taking that from payers, and it was costing $11 billion a year. And, putting that into human terms at the time, that would have vaccinated every girl in the world from 0 to 18 with the 3-part Gardasil vaccine for cancer that was new at the time. That's how much money that is related to a human. And, that made a difference. It did
make a difference.
A difference.
It did make a difference. And
I'm going to accelerating it.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you and say that to this day, the U.S. Healthcare Efficiency Index, which was part of your advocacy campaign to get that done, to get that policy written, is still kind of a classic example in public affairs and PR agencies of like, this was an amazing thing that this team pulled off, right? And they
Yeah.
did all of this advocacy work, and like very impressive. I still talk about it to this day too. Whenever someone's like, "We need to make a law" or something like that, and I was like, "Well, let
Well,
me tell you
yeah.
about what Miriam Paramore did."
Yeah, you don't think about it. You think so it's a great use case. Here I am, Southern girl.
Raised by a pastor.
So educate, blah, blah, blah. But you can do it. Like you can do it. You can go to Washington and find a way to talk to the right people, and you can make a case, and it can happen. And, I'll wave my flag and everything. God bless America. But that ties it all together for me. The network, HIMSS, understanding legislation and regulation, how policy impacts our healthcare practice, public relations, government affairs, investor relations, telling your story, what you do, what you help companies do, build company success, have an exit like you did, changes people's lives. Putting technology out there, taking $11 billion of absolute waste, let's transfer it into healthcare or vaccines or, food or something.
Do the good things. Do the good things.
We can all do that. And it's okay to do that in business and be a businesswoman and be proud of yourself. So again, it just gives me a lot of joy to be able to share that.
Listen, that was the best wrap up I've ever heard. Thank you. Thank you for handling that for us. That was amazing.
I got excited.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Miriam. You're awesome. We've talked forever, which I obviously love. I'm sure everyone else loves it too, but thank you for, thank you for spending some time with us.